Hello everybody, thanks for being here for the last course. So first of all, do you have questions on the last lectures? As usual, everything was crystal clear. No problem with the proof, too easy. Fair enough. So I left you with an exercise last week. Some people wanted to try themselves this lemma, this Jolin's lemma. Did anybody succeed? Has anybody tried? You still want the solution? Okay. You're not very talkative today, but let's suppose it's because it's lunchtime. Okay, so let me remind you of the setup of Jolin's lemma. So I've used it if we have a series of random variables where f of n is a deterministic function, and this is a random variable. So they all live on the same probability space, so that you can consider the series. And so the only hypothesis, I supposed that xn, so these are non-negative random variables, I suppose that they were converging towards a limiting random variable, which is almost surely strictly positive as n goes to infinity. Remember, I was using that in my setup. I was using that with 1 over n, and this was 1 over the rescaled perimeter, like n to the minus 3/2, the perimeter in the pinning exploration to the 3/2, if I remember correctly. So our function f of n was just 1 over n, and this was the random variable that was converging towards 1 over, with the notation I have taken, something like that. That's just the setup in which I applied the lemma. And the lemma says that if the series of f of n diverges, then almost surely the random series here diverges as well. Okay? And this is nice because it requires no assumption on the dependency on the xn. They could be correlated, but this still applies. Okay? So how do we prove that? So the proof is very short. So suppose that the series, we'll prove it by arguing by contradiction. So by contradiction, suppose that we've got the hypothesis, but not the conclusion. But this, say, is smaller than m with probability at least epsilon. Okay? If it's finite with a positive probability, you can find an m and an epsilon such that this holds. So on this event, we will call let A be the event when this holds. You just compute the expectation. So what is the expectation of the series of the f of n xn on the event A? Well, it's very easy. It's just the sum of f of n, say, and the expectation of xn on this event. But by your assumption, this is smaller than m. You agree? Because I conditioned on the fact that this series is smaller than m. Now the key is that since xn converges in distribution towards some random variable which is almost surely positive, we can find c'est delta strictly positive such that for n large enough, we have the probability that xn is bigger than delta, say smaller than delta, then this is less than epsilon over 2. Okay? Because otherwise, this would mean that the limiting distribution would have an atomic part in 0. Okay? Then you come back here and you say that the expectation of xn on this event has probability epsilon at least. Right? I claim that this is at least delta times the probability of A minus epsilon over 2. Okay? Because just, or if you prefer, let's write it that way, this is bigger than 1 minus epsilon over 2. So if I intersect this event with the event A, I'm sure that I have a non-empty intersection of probability at least the probability of A minus the mass that I've lost here. Okay? But this is bigger than epsilon over 2 because the probability of A is bigger than epsilon. And so here, if you come back here, then you just have the series of f of n. This guy is eventually bigger, so for n large, this is bigger than delta epsilon over 2. And by your assumption, this is less than m. It's a contradiction. Contradiction because we supposed that the series of f of n is diverging. Okay, so if you want a nice undergrad exercise in probability, this is one. Okay. So today, let's move to the almost last chapter about percolation. On random maps. So what do I mean by percolation on random maps? First, we will work under the probability that I denoted by P infinity, which you remember it's the law of the half-plane version or half-plane infinite Boltzmann quadrangulation. And the generic element, so the map M, under this probability measure, looks like something like this. So remember, you have an infinite boundary, which may not be simple and which is almost surely not simple. One more, like this. Here you've got quadrangles, I don't know, stuff like that. And so on and so forth. And you've got one root edge on the boundary, so that the external face, what was the color for the external face? Blue, maybe? The external face, this guy, is of infinite perimeter. And you've got only one end. Okay? So we'll study percolation on this object, and we'll first focus on phase percolation. So what do I mean by phase percolation? So imagine that you fix a map M of the above sort. So such infinite quadrangulation of the half plane. And we will perform a phase percolation on it with an appropriate boundary condition. So the phase percolation on it, so the measure, under the measure that I will denote by PM phase. F we color all the faces, all the inner faces of M independently. So I should put P face, or let's put the face down there. M face P. All the inner faces independently. Black with probability P, and white otherwise with probability 1 minus P. Okay, so each face inside here will be colored independently. So let's do an example. Say that you color this one black. Yes, this is black. Okay. This one is colored white. This one black. Say this one black. This is black. Huh? This is black. Black. I don't know. White. Black. Okay. And we will have a boundary condition. The boundary condition is that the external face, the face of infinite degree, will be white. And just to be able to start the exploration, we will say that just adjacent on the right of the root edge, we will add a small face of degree 2, or if you prefer, a small region of degree 2, which we color black, just to start the exploration, to say that's the origin of my cluster. Okay? So the boundary condition, if you prefer, the external face, the infinite face, is all white, except that on the right of the root edge, oops, that's the root edge, I add a small region which I color black. Okay? And as usual in percolation, the object of interest will be the cluster of the origin, and to try to know whether this cluster can be infinite or finite. So we'll consider the cluster of the origin. So C we denote by C the cluster of the origin. And for that, I should tell you when to declare two faces, when our two faces belong to the same cluster. So where the convention is that if you have two faces which are black and which share an edge, they share an edge, then they are part of the same cluster. Okay? As opposed to we could have decided, and we will do that later on, if you have two black faces like this, which share only one vertex, and which say are surrounded by white faces, whatever, if this is white, then these are not part, these two faces here and there are not part of the same cluster. Yet another way to say this is to say that we are performing site percolation on the dual lattice, where the edges are the dual edges of the map. Okay? Questions on this percolation model? You've seen percolation, right, in the first semester? Yes, a lot. Site percolation, or bond, or face, or all kinds? They know, okay. So you're not surprised by this definition. Okay, so for example, here, okay, that's a trivial example, but if I were to consider the cluster of the origin here, I would only have this face of degree 2. Even if this guy were black, then the cluster of the origin would be finite here because I'm surrounded by the white face. But imagine that my root edge is there, for example. Then it might be that the cluster of the origin might go on like this and maybe spread along the map and be infinite. So that's the theorem we want to prove. We want to compute the critical threshold. So so you sample your map according to the measure P infinity, and you sample your percolation at a parameter P. Okay, my omega E here is just, okay, that's my face F. I declare that omega F says 1 if black. I will not use it, but and 0 if white. So that's my percolation measure. So I first sample the map, then the percolation. Then we have okay, let me write it in an annealed way like this. Sorry, I'll do an integral instead of this. Almost the same, but I will write it in the integrated version. I first sample the map, then the percolation measure, P. What is my notation? P up there, sorry. M d omega. And I ask the question, is the cluster of the origin infinite? Okay, that's an annealed measure, meaning that I integrate over all maps and over the percolation at the same time. And this function is 0 if P is less than some threshold that I denote PC face, and is positive if P is larger than the same threshold. Okay? Where this threshold is equal to 3/4. Okay. So maybe first a few comments about this theorem. You may not be accustomed to this kind of statement. Maybe the kind of statement you know is you sample, you have a lattice say fixed, M is fixed, and you want to know whether there is percolation on this lattice, and there is a critical threshold above which you have percolation, and below which you don't. Okay? There, in this form, it's not exactly what it says, because I'm averaging over the lattice. But actually, we will prove it in this fashion, but it leads the following more usual way to state it. So remark. This implies that P infinity d omega almost surely the critical threshold for phase percolation on M is this PC phase, or in other words, it means that P infinity d omega P M phase P of my percolation. We have all the clusters, all the black clusters in M are finite when P is less than PC phase, and there exists an infinite cluster if P is larger than PC phase. Okay? So that's the statement you should be more accustomed to. I give you the lattice M, which I sampled according to this measure. Then almost surely for this lattice, the critical threshold is 3/4, meaning that below this threshold you won't have any infinite black cluster for phase percolation, and above which you will have at least one infinite cluster. Okay? So it could happen a priori that the critical threshold PC phase might depend on the lattice, meaning that since the lattice is random, you may sample a lattice such that the critical threshold, I don't know, is 1/2, and you may sample another one for which the critical threshold is 2/3. But it's not the case, it's always the same. Okay? I'll let you think about that. But you'll see it's, maybe I'll do that afterwards. It's an easy consequence of this and the pinning process. Okay, so let's prove this. So as you may guess, the idea will be to design a proper pinning process. Okay. Will be to design a proper pinning process that explores the phase percolation. Proof, use an appropriate pinning process. And in the case of phase percolation, that's more or less the most obvious one. Let me first define for you the pinning process, and then we will see it in action. So the pinning process will be, with my notation, it will be a filled-in pinning process. So it's a filled-in pinning process. And I just have to tell you which algorithm I use to peel the next edge and to fill in the finite hole that I may create. And so we will assume that at step n, the explore map is of the following form. So that's the map you've got explored so far. And we will assume that the boundary condition is such that there is a finite segment of edges on the boundary, so that these edges are adjacent to black faces. Don't know, maybe something like that. Okay, these are black faces. And all the other edges on the boundary are adjacent to white faces. Okay, this is white. And the root edge is somewhere here. That's the little black face I have added to start the exploration. And we'll assume that all these faces are part of the same cluster as the one of the origin. Okay? So far, that's an assumption. If your map is of this sort, you understand what it means? Then peel this edge. It was in orange. We'll peel this one. The leftmost edge on the black boundary. I will call that the black boundary, and the rest will be the white boundary. Okay? Okay, that's the algorithm. We will need to say a few things about this algorithm to be able to apply the result we developed. But let me show you on an example what it produces. Okay, let's do the example at random, or let's take this one. It's just to help digestion. Just draw a couple of things. Black, 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 white, white. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, white, and let's put white as well. Okay? This is white, and the rest, you don't care. I don't know. This could be black. Okay? That's a finite cluster, and let's explore it using this peeling process. Okay? That's my origin. There. Okay. So we start with the empty guy, which only has the root edge here. It's indeed of that form, and so my algorithm tells me, yeah, you have to peel the only black edge, which is this one. If I do so, I discover a face like this. This face turns out to be black. Good for me. I can continue my exploration. Notice that if that face turned out to be white, I would have finished. I would have finished because if this is white, then the cluster of the origin is blocked, and my cluster is finite. So let's assume it's black. So I am indeed of that form, because if I kind of forget what is inside my explored map, what do I see? I see just a white boundary condition. There I see 3 edges which are linked to the cluster of the origin via black faces, and then white. That's what I see from the exterior here, this boundary condition. So I need to peel, using this algorithm, the leftmost edges on the black boundary of the explored map, which is this one. Or if you prefer, this one or this one in this drawing. If I do so in the map, what do I discover? I discover a face. Remember that at that point, I don't know that these two edges are actually glued in the map. So I discover a face, which is a quadrangle. Okay? This quadrangle turns out to be black. Again, the explored map is of the following form, of the above form. Let me, in the meantime, put the dual edges that I have explored in the map. And here. Applying this algorithm, I want to peel the leftmost edge on the black boundary, which is this one. Okay? So if I trigger these peeling steps, it's as if in the dual map I want to discover this dual edge. Okay? And so in the map tells me, oh, okay, this dual edge is actually the same as this one. So let me deform a bit the drawing to make you understand what is going on. I have this, and actually I should maybe do something like that. This was my quadrangle, my black quadrangle. I'm triggering this peeling step, and this peeling step tells me, oh, this edge has been identified with this one. Okay? And so now I know that this quadrangle is indeed folded on itself. Okay, so I'm at that stage. But fair enough, this explored map is still of that form. So I may now trigger a peeling step, which is the leftmost one on the black boundary. That's this one. Okay? And so what do I discover? In the map, this edge is adjacent to a new face, which is now white. Okay? But nevertheless, this explored map is again of that form. If you go along the boundary, I see white boundary condition, white boundary condition, white boundary condition, black, black, white. So now I can trigger a peeling step on the leftmost edge of this black boundary, which is this one. What do I discover? I discover a face like that. Again. So again, at this stage of the peeling, I don't know that this edge is actually the same as this one. Because in the dual version, I have not explored that dual edge. Okay? Again, this map is of that form. I peel this edge, which is the leftmost and the only edge black, and I discover I have some more room. I discover a black face. Then I peel this one. I discover this. Then I peel this one. And I see that in the map, actually this is glued with this one. I accelerate a bit. Huh? Then I peel this one, and I discover this. And I'm stuck. Because then all the boundary is white. Okay? Is that clear that this algorithm works on that example? So few points to check. So can we, first question, can we indeed always apply algorithm A? Meaning, if you have this boundary condition and you do one peeling step, are you still of this condition, of this type? That's fairly easy to see, because if you have white boundary condition except for some part, for some segment of edges which are adjacent to black guys, when you trigger a peeling step here, there are three possibilities. Let's say 4. First possibility is, let's say 5. First possibility is you discover a face inside the map. So since we are working with quadrangulation, it must be a quadrangle. This quadrangle may be white, in which case that's okay. We are still off that boundary form. Or we may discover a quadrangle which is black. Again, that's still fine for me. Or we do a peeling step which identifies two edges on the boundary, and we have two cases. Either we identify with an edge on the left or on the right. Let's start with the left. So if I identify an edge on the left, that means that I trigger some peeling steps of that form. This is my black boundary. And this edge has been identified with some edges on the left, swallowing a part here, finite part. But look, again, my boundary conditions are preserved, white, black, white. Or I may identify this peeled edge with one edge on the right. And so let's distinguish two cases. So first case, I see something like that. So that's the edge I peel. My boundary conditions are black here, black, 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 black. Let's assume I identify with an edge which is still black here. So again, I swallow a finite part here. Notice that when I swallow such a part here, I don't know exactly what's going on with the cluster of the origin here, because in that finite part might happen some things, but this part is finite. So to know whether the cluster is finite or not, I don't care, because it must be finite. Okay? So I identify these two edges. Look, again, these boundary conditions are preserved. And last case, which is actually one of these forms, is I identify this peeled edge with a white edge totally on the right of this black boundary. In this case, you have something like that, where the black boundary conditions stops here at some point, and you are facing white boundary condition. And in this case, you know that the peeling algorithm stops. Why? Because the new explored map, En+1, here will be of that form with a degenerate black boundary reduced to nothing. So you have no edge to peel anymore. Okay? So when such a peeling step appears, you stop the peeling process. In this case, that happens when I discovered this quadrangle here. So far, I have some black boundary. I discovered this white quadrangle, and then my black boundary has been totally eaten, swallowed. Okay? And I stop. Is that clear? So, lemma, geometric lemma. So far, I'm not using randomness at all so far. This is all deterministic statements. So lemma, indeed, the boundary conditions are preserved. And furthermore, the cluster of the origin is infinite if and only if the process goes on forever. Okay? You should be convinced by these drawings. At least if you're not convinced, I'm not giving more details than what I've given there. What you see is when you stop, clearly, since this black boundary represents what you, the cluster of the origin is somewhere here. If you have this white boundary along the explored map, clearly you're blocked. The cluster of the origin is blocked and cannot be infinite. Okay? And on the other, for the other direction, if the process goes on forever like this, you see that since the map is locally finite, you must discover infinitely many faces which are black like this. And so the cluster must be infinite. Okay? So, questions about that? About the face peeling process? So now, let's use our randomness, because we know that the peeling process is a Markov chain under this probability measure. But you should be careful. Exactly as last case, when I was dealing with the peeling process along a simple random walk, I said, last case, the random walk has some additional randomness, which may depend on the map. It might not be a very kosher peeling process. So what was the trick last time? Remember with the random walk? What was the trick?
Just put randomness.
Yes, I was putting randomness outside of the map. I was putting my randomness into some random variable omega, which was carrying all the randomness which was necessary to rediscover the random walk, but the key was that this randomness was independent of the randomness of the map, meaning that we were applying such a randomized algorithm under a probability measure which was of the form I sampled the map, and then I sampled the randomness independently of the map. And I was using an algorithm that uses the discovered map and the additional randomness, but since this randomness was independent of the map, I could make the same thing, and the peeling process had the same transition probabilities. You remember? Can I do that here? Because a priori, as I have written, I did that on purpose, I have written my thing like this. This probability measure was depending on M. M face P d omega F. I did that on purpose, just to be clear on that point. Because a priori, the information on the percolation is not independent of the map, because just here the index set is the one of the faces of the map. Can I trick my algorithm so that to decouple these two randomness into two independent randomness?
You can sample a sequence of black and white before.
Exactly. You can, this algorithm here, you can write it A of E omega, where omega, instead of being indexed by the faces of the map, omega is once and for all a sequence of 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, which has which it's Bernoulli measure, infinite Bernoulli measure. And so that when you discover a new face in the peeling process, then you look in this randomness to decide which is the color you need to attribute to this new face. You look at the new bit that you've not discovered to attribute the new color. Is that clear? Or if you prefer, I can once and for all first sample 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and so on, using the product measure, and that gives my omega. And I can write this algorithm as a well-defined peeling algorithm using this algorithm where omega is fixed. And then I take average over omega. Okay? It's exactly the same thing as last week. So I leave that as an exercise for you. So it's well-defined, what I called randomized peeling process. So in particular, we know the transitions. What are they? What are the transitions? Oops, sorry. Excuse me, sir. Let's write this, but on a bigger board. Just to, it's a reminder of the transitions, if you wish. So that's my current state. I'm peeling this edge. So either I have this, and I discover a white face. What is the probability to see this? The probability to see this, did I introduce you the B infinity? No? Maybe not. Okay, what is the probability to discover, regardless of the color, what is the probability to discover a quadrangle like this? Remember? It's nu1, and nu1 was alpha over rho 2/3. Okay? So that happens with probability 2/3. So if I want this to be white, this happens with probability 1 minus p times 2/3. Okay? Other case, this face is black. This happens with probability p times 2/3. Or I am identifying this edge with one on the left. Enclosing a bubble of perimeter 2L. So let's see if you remember correctly what are these transitions. What's the probability to see this? It's what I denoted nu of minus L minus 1. And it's WL CQ. CQ was alpha to the minus L minus 1. It was a number. Remember that this had an explicit form, which I will not use, but anyway. And last case, we are peeling an edge identified with an edge on the right, thus enclosing a bubble of length 2L, and this happens with the same probability. Sorry. With my notation of nu, I had a factor 2 in nu. Sorry. But this is correct. Okay. So that's the transitions for these peeling rules. So the idea now is to say, oh, but wait. What if we look at Bn, which is the length of the black boundary of the explored map? What can you say on this process? Okay, let's look at this case. There, the black boundary. Let's look at the variation of the length of the black boundary. In this case, I diminish the length of the black boundary by 1. In this case, I increase the length of the black boundary by 2. I prefer 3 minus 1. Who knows why? In this case, I decrease the length of the black boundary by 1. And in this case, I decrease the length of the black boundary by minus 1, this one. possibly 2L, maybe 1, but what is the condition there? Let's say minus 2L minus 1, unless
For our purpose, it's good to look at this one.
if you want to decrease by this length, at least the black boundary has to run along all this stuff, otherwise you reach 0. Okay? Otherwise you diminish by minus b. Otherwise it's minus b. Okay, and by the property of the pinning process, what do you know about these transitions? These transitions happen independently for each n. So clearly, consequence of this is that this random process Bn is actually very close to a random walk. Consequence, Bn has the law of a random walk with independent increments. Not exactly because of this step, but what does that mean? That means that as soon as the random walk will reach a negative value, 0 or negative, it is immediately set to 0. So killed and set to 0. When hitting z minus, which is 0, minus 1, okay? Fair enough. So what do I need to know now to decide whether, now using this lemma, I just want to see whether this process goes on forever or not. So I want to see whether Bn will eventually be 0 or not. So what is the question I need to ask on this random walk? Whether this random walk, let's call it as the law of a random walk. Let's call it SP. What's the question I need to ask on SP? Do I need to write for you what are the increments of this walk? These are here in blue, without this conditioning. Okay? So what do I need to know? Whether it's recurrent, yes. And when are one-dimensional random walk recurrent? When the mean is 0. So in this case, I just want to know, not recurrence, but I want to know whether this walk will touch z minus. So it's not exactly recurrence, but it's linked to positivity or not of the mean increment. So let's compute the mean increment of SP. So what is the expectation of delta SP? You should feel comfortable because you've got explicit formulas. So if I were to give you this in limited time, then you know that this is, you remember this is h down arrow, up arrow, sorry, of L divided by L plus 1, L plus 2, totally explicit. You could compute. But let me give you a way to compute this without requiring these exact numbers. So this is equal to, and let's do that. I'm doing that because the formula that I will write with on this board are universal. So remember that in the pinning process, I had two or let's say 3 these possible outcomes. But a key fact was that the probability nu was centered. Remember? What does that mean? That means that the mean increase of the boundary length is 0. That doesn't mean anything because the boundary is infinite. But you can define what is the variation of the length of the boundary. Here, I have a +3 and a -1 because I'm swallowing this guy and discovering 3 guys here. Here, I have a -1 and a minus this. And here, I have a -1 and minus this. So I will put 2 numbers, which what I call exposure. Expo is the expectation of the number of exposed edges. In our case, that's totally trivial. It's just 2/3 times 3. Because this happens with probability 2/3. And in that case, the number of exposed edges is 3. And I will also define the gulp. So it's bad that Matan is not here because Matan would have found a better name for this. Gulp is is that a good name? Yeah. So the gulp for me will be the expectation of the number of swallowed edges except the peeled edge. So it's the expectation of the number of edges like that in such a peeling step. Okay? The number of edges here. So since nu is centered, I must have this relation. The number of exposed edges, the number of new edges I create on the boundary, should be equal in mean to the number of edges I destroy. I always destroy one edge, which is the edge I peel. But also, I swallow 2 gulps, because there is one like this and one like that. So I must have this relation. This is the mean variation, the variation of the boundary length is 0 in mean. That's created edges, and that's destroyed edges. Okay? So with this notation, let's come back here. What is the variation of the mean increment of my walk S? So there is always a -1, because I always destroy one black edge on the boundary, if there is one. In this case, there is a -1, there is a -1, there is a -1, there is a -1. Okay, so this always has a -1. But in that case, when I swallow something on the left, the gulp here does not count in the black boundary. So I do not count this gulp. But on that case, I must count all the gulp here, because that's exactly this number of edges, -2L -1. So that's minus gulp. That's this case. But I also have some edges, some black edges that I create, which are these ones, the ones that are exposed. So this is the number of exposed, the mean number of exposed edges. But this happens if the guy that I discover here is black. So this happens with probability P. But using the relation there, the gulp is exposed edges -1 divided by 2. So this is just exposed edges, so it's exposed +1 divided by 2 exposed. Remember that exposed, in our case, is 2. So let's cross fingers. 2 plus 1, 3, divided by 2 times 2, 4, 3/4. Again, I'm writing that in that form because the reasoning I've done for quadrangulation works perfectly well without changing a letter in many other cases. So 3/4. So what do we deduce from that? So we deduce that if the mean increment of the walk is negative, then that means that this guy drifts towards minus infinity, and so Bn is equal to 0 eventually. And so the cluster is finite. And that works also if I have equality, because if I have equality, I have a random walk with a first moment. Since it's centered, it must be recurrent, so it will visit z minus, and I only need the limit there. Otherwise, if I have the increment of that walk positive, then there is a positive chance that this walk actually stays positive forever, except the first step. Then the probability that Sp of n, okay, I've been a bit loose here because I have not told you where to start this walk. Started from 1. Because I start with the boundary condition with only one edge. So the probability that this guy stays positive forever is positive. Why? Because it drifts towards infinity, so there is a positive probability it stays positive forever. And so Bn could be strictly positive with positive proba, and that's what we wanted. Okay? Maybe it's a good timing to do a break, and I ask you during the break to think a little bit of what I've claimed on that board, that this annealed calculation where I take average on the map and the percolation in the meantime, where how can we deduce from this the fact that the quenched percolation threshold are always 3/4, meaning for almost every map, M, this map has a percolation threshold for phase percolation, which is 3/4. Okay? 10 minutes for the coffee break?